Okay, so this week we will learn Perek Tes, chapter 9, which is sort of a continuation to last chapter, where we moved into the human experience and the division that is created between people and this senseless hate that can get aroused easily. In this chapter, he sort of picks it up a notch and shows us how rampant this is and how complex it can become. And he introduces the idea of Acheichem Soinechem with the pasuk in Yeshayahu, and the way he translates it is that Acheichem are Soinechem. You have a reality where you have a brother, in the literal sense, but more importantly, in the broader context of people that are, as he says, Ach Lashon Chibur, brotherly love, the idea of people getting along, people that are getting along, working together, friends. The Mittler actually in the Maimer brings the example, you have families that are ready to marry into each other, and they do marry into each other. Right? There's no, there's really nothing holding them back. There are many people that we get along with everybody until it comes to shidduchim, and then it's we don't touch that family. But here you're talking about acheichem, people that are so close, they marry into each other. Basically, people that really get along and they're working together. And at the same time, inside there's seneichem. There's this deep-seated hate and inability to get along in a real way with other people. So much so that this creates a situation where he brings a few levels to this. Where number one, I won't be happy in your success. It won't pain me when you're in pain, and a, I guess, worse level where one gets pleasure, one becomes happy from another one person's failure, Schadenfreude, whatever it's called. So that's a sort of the first half of the perek here. What do you think about that? Pretty it sounds pretty vicious, but what exactly is going on? I get along with you, I don't get along with you.
So first of all, it's ironic, two brothers talking about Acheichem Soinechem.
The irony is the Acheichem or the Soinechem?
So it's interesting, B'chlal, Chassidus and Yiddishkeit uses the expression brothers as a relationship that actually works. And yet you find that most sibling relationships are actually quite complicated. In other words, Kedachem of Albanim makes sense. Kedachem, that the mother comforts a child, fine. You start saying brothers, like, I don't know, I'm a rabbi and I do rabbi for my profession. I'm telling you, I'm dealing with fights between brothers and sisters all day. So first
and you don't deal with any fights between parents and kids or
I do, but come on, but the most complicated relationships, not most, but very complicated relationships are siblings. Not so much when they're younger, but once they're older and you're vicious and taking care of parents, etc. So it's always been interesting to me that, like, Chassidim haben sich lieb. Chassidim love each other like brothers. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just Chassidim love each other like Chassidim. It's just, we're doing good.
So the idea is across the widest sea, you send one brother across to the other side of the world, and then it all works out.
That ultimately there's a blessing that in close friendships, and not necessarily the brotherly, but that was just a cute introduction. I'm not sure if it's emes or not. I do think that we have that paradox. I mean, you say about the Mittel Rebbe referencing to shidduch. What the Gemara says, there's no shidduch without fights. So the same person you just agreed that family is pasik for me and fits my style, the next 3 months to the wedding, you're fighting about every single thing. I one time heard that why by the chasna are both sides of the wedding happy. They both had to pay so much money because each one thinks that he got the other one, he got the better deal. See, but pretty much in 3 months, each one's fighting about who gets the better deal. So there is very much this irony that you often get along least with the people that are closest to you. I always tell people in my community, do you treat the guy that fills up your gas, your petrol, any nicer than you treat your spouse? And the answer is sometimes, very often, yes. You're very civil. You walk up, you pull up, the guy says, how much should I fill you up? Thank you so much, $20. You don't scream at them, you don't act vicious to them. Why? There's a comfortable distance, and therefore they don't get to you. Sometimes the more I know you, the more you get to me. And the more you get to me, so the closeness causes the sonechem. It's a fascinating paradox that the people that you have the most issues with are the people you're the closest with. And that's where often sinas chinam plays out. That's what he's saying in this ice, and that is that most of us don't randomly hate baseless hatred, a guy in Australia or Timbuktu. You don't know the guy from Barasot. So even if you don't like the guy's style, it doesn't get to you. Someone that gets to you has to be triggering something in you. And something that's triggering means that they're quite close. They're in your face. So the irony is when we like till now in the Mimer, when we spoke about fighting, you thought about you have friends, one category, and you have enemies, another category. And you have to turn your enemies into friends. And over here he's saying, no. Sometimes it's the exact same thing. That best friend that you go and you travel the world with and you have great memories with, that guy, you and him have a very complicated relationship. It's not always, I just wish the best for you and I wish the best for you. Sometimes you see the person flourishing, so it hurts. And you see the person collapsing, and you remember, I don't know, in yeshiva days that guy was Mr. Successful, and now you're seeing that life isn't turning out like a garden of roses. And there's a little, there's a little drop of joy, as he says, Rachmana litzlan. So when you're learning in the Mimer, it sounds like, no, what kind of person could do that? But think about it. If you had a group of friends and you had the one group of friends, that guy that was just always cool, everything worked out for him, got accepted to the best yeshivas, the best seminary, everything just worked out for that individual. Best shidduch right off the bat, blah, blah, blah. You have to be a great person not to be a little jealous. And then you hear 5 years later that the life's a bit of a struggle. To really feel and not sit there saying, you know what, finally life gave them a kick, fine, okay, they got it. Life's not a garden of roses anymore. To be able to give them true compassion, I think it's actually greatness. Like, I don't think the Rebbe Rashab is describing a bunch of mobsters. I think he's describing us.
Right. So then the question is, obviously, what is the solution? But more than that, meaning people struggle with this very much, right? Well, obviously, I have a good friend, a spouse, a sibling, people I'm working together with, and what's going on? Why am I feeling this? And it's so hard for people to accept even that they're feeling it, that they either deny the feelings or they start rationalizing the feelings, which is a common theme in Heichaltzu, where these senseless feelings are brought into the human experience, and it's so hard for us to accept that they're senseless. So we rationalize them and create things to fight about, and then once that we fight about it, we already have a reason why we hate. Yet it's there. So number one, it's obviously very important to acknowledge that it exists. So then what do? It's like, and many people will say that they'd rather not have relationships. And in extreme cases, it does affect them, that they'll be scared of relationships. And especially if they were burnt in earlier relationships and they just bounce out. When it comes to shidduchim for different people, this is obviously a factor. In jobs and shlichus, in many different areas, at a certain stage, it's just like, let me do my own thing. Why have to suffer through working with other people? Yeah, I know there's tremendous value in it, but the dynamics in the relationship has become so complex. Let me just bounce. Let me deal without it. So you'll say, you can't be successful if you don't work with other people. How do you deal with this? How do I come to terms with it and then actually deal with it? What do I do? How do I stop becoming jealous from the people I'm closest with?
And if I knew the answer, I would be a millionaire. So I'll say something. When I got married, just as I was dating, a certain older friend turned to me and said, getting married is two people solving issues that had they never married would have never been created in the first place. And I thought that was like,
and you're like, thanks for coming 2 months later.
Yeah, like thanks, like, but actually quite well said. And the point is, like you said, like you're creating issues. So I want to bring up, first of all, in the past few weeks we've been talking we often, like when we referenced not getting along, we referenced two groups of people, let's say two groups within Chabad or two groups of people in general. What this ice is telling you is very much within each group, there's a lot of dynamics as well. There's not two sides, there's a million sides. And I remember the first time like it became clear to me, like when you're younger, you see the world in black and white. So there's us and them. And suddenly you start realizing us is nicht us and them is nicht them. In other words, like it's all a fantasy we create. And like the dynamics are often more complex within, let's say, the Democratic Party within themselves than versus the Republicans. But you often just see them as group versus group. So yes, like as I said, the relationships are very complicated in the intimate relationships we have. But at the same time, and this is what I would tell somebody who struggles with these and is scared of it, it's also the most rewarding. The reason why the relationships are so complicated is because they're taking you to a very deep place within you. The reason why a sibling or a spouse or a child triggers you is because they're going to a very deep place. And that place is a place that you want to be grateful if you're able to access. Like I've met people who've never married by choice. I'm not saying, some people, they wanted to and the Eibishter didn't give it to them. I'm talking about people by choice, convincing themselves that they got the best, the best lot in life. And you just see that there's like a whole level of themselves that they never uncovered. They didn't even want to uncover. They didn't realize, like, it's a depth within yourself you didn't discover. Did you save yourself a lifetime of strife? Yes. Did you save yourself sleepless nights? Yes. Did you save yourself tears? Yes. Did you save yourself money? Yes. But what did you walk out with? So, and Rabbi Gluchowski in Rechavat often says that, I believe he quotes the Rebbe, that in this time, before Mashiach comes, often the issues of Shalom and Avos Yisrael and Avos Chinam play out in Shalom bias, in home dynamics, in that true love plays out in home dynamics. And that's why we often see there's so many issues in that area. Like most of the issues in Chabad or in the Frum movement are not between big, like I said, big organizations and two sides and four sides. It's our homes. But the issue is not avoid it. The issue is to as we've been talking the last few Asias in the Maimer, work on your bittul, work on not taking up space. But to not walk into a relationship and think that you're in any way spearing yourself, it's like cutting off an arm. I mean, I'm not talking about dysfunctional relationships. There's certain relationships that are dysfunctional and I have to keep distance. But an average relationship that's complicated, that is where it is. That's where your greatness, that's where you become a great person, in the places that it pushes your buttons. Otherwise, you just become egocentric.
So let's discuss for a bit another point he brings out there. So he speaks about the idea how really we should be more troubled by someone else's misfortune than our own. Because when I'm going through a tzara, something's wrong by me, I can validate. I can find reasons for why it happened. I can make a proper cheshbon nefesh. Through introspection, you can find reasons. And once you're able to understand, you're able to rationalize why you're going through something, life becomes so much easier, which itself is a very important point. At the moment you can explain something, if there's worth to the pain you're going through, it already becomes bearable. But when we're dealing with other people, you can't do that. And the point that he brings out is not to project one's own experiences on someone else, which is, I don't know if it's a regular expression in Chassidus, but a very important point.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, the first thing that comes to mind when I saw that expression was quite like, wow, it's like harsh. As a father to a son, I have a son, one of my children is very similar to me, at least I think. And the natural reaction is you start projecting everything you've been through in life on them. And it's a famous thing in parenting, a basic thing in psychology. And you try to spare them from the pain you went through, but ultimately they're on their own journey. And this is much more than that. This is saying, like, just because you struggle with something in one way doesn't mean that the other person struggles. I remember one time, I had a certain nisayon. Let's say my nisayon, okay, definitely between you and me, that's not my nisayon, alcohol. Let's say my nisayon was saying too much l'chaim, which...
Talking about achechem seinechem.
Yeah, like And I remember, like, I set a lot of boundaries in my life that I'm not going to drink alcohol, there won't be alcohol in my house, etc. And I remember venting to a friend of mine, like all my big Vasisa, Michael, like all the big boundaries I put in my life. And the guy's like, dude, like, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you smoking? Like, I could have 50 bottles of mashka in my house and it does nothing to me. And at that moment, I realized, yeah, Taka, it's mine is saying, it's not yours. In other words, most of us, we convince ourselves that my journey is your journey. And true bittul, I believe, and what he's trying to say is, for the other person, you have to convince yourself the guy's doing everything right. You're doing the exact same thing as that person. But for you, you can't justify it because you know yourself. For that person, you have to believe that the person's doing it for the right reasons. But he does say, he makes a caveat at the end of the ice, and he says, if you're 100% sure that the guy actually has an issue, then tell it to them.
Right. At the end of the day, when it comes practically, it's very hard and it's not so simple because in general, you have two kinds of people. You have people, that are what we call krichers. They're there, they know what's going on, or even in a positive sense, they're aware. They're very aware. They're aware of themselves. They're aware of others. They criticize people, but they're even more than that. They're their own greatest critiques.
Usually very cynical people. Usually very cynical.
Yeah, and they'll fluctuate between self-criticism and criticism of others, which actually, let's say, in Klali Chinuch V'Adracha, to explain that length, that self-criticism is actually a very fundamental yesod. It's a foundation in education. Only through self-critique can you have the ability to criticize others. Then you have people that, whatever, everyone's good, I'm good, you're good, life's good, it's amazing. To bring this paradox that on yourself, find the reason for something. In other words, look at yourself in the mirror, criticize yourself. That's a big part of Heichaltzu is about self-critique. On the other hand, look at other people that they're perfect. It almost sounds like this Gan Eden kind of reality. In other words, how does a person live with this dichotomy?
So personally, I think what he was trying to say is, first and foremost, stop thinking about the other person. Like, if you have to think about the other person, then convince yourself they're doing it right. But like, why am I spending time thinking about the other person? Like, what does that have to do with me? If it's something very obvious and I'm his friend and I can help him, new. But if not, I think what he's saying even deeper is like, stop thinking about the guy. Yeah, the guy's doing everything right. You're going to dig? Obviously, you'll dig. You'll find that everything's wrong because I'm as human as you. So if I start digging into your kishkis, of course you're not. But he's saying just leave it. Just give the guy the benefit of the doubt. He knows what it is and move on. This whole idea of cucking in somebody else's weaknesses is something that I think throughout the Maimer he's saying, like, just let it go, man. Like, I remember as a 14-year-old Mesiftabach, one of the big passions are to prove how every single Magid is a hypocrite. That guy, a hypocrite. That guy's full of, etc., etc. You have all these expressions. At some stage, you realize, like, what
you definitely didn't grow up in this community.
And like, at some stage, you wake up and you're like, yo, Mazel Tov, Baruch haba, welcome to the planet, kid. You discovered that everybody's human. Now move on and actually start working on yourself. In other words, like what's the chiddush over here? Like, yeah, people aren't perfect. And now just give them the benefit of the doubt and focus on yourself. I think we do spend way too much time analyzing things that we actually have very little idea of. And more importantly, it's irrelevant to us. Let's say you figured out my issues. How in the world does that help you?
It picks me up. More like it puts you down, so I'm higher. Right.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, but like, it's like a pastime that we have. Like, okay, I'll cuff and cuff and cuff. I think that's the thing. Just leave the guy, loze him up. Okay, he's human, let him go.
Right, where it gets complicated is that we are in a relationship. And I am sort of, it's not just I'm thinking about myself, it's not thinking about you. Because we're in a relationship, so you are on my mind, right? And I do think, and that's where the dynamic becomes so complicated because I can't just think about myself independently of you. We're in a relationship, and therefore you are sort of important to me, or you're in my vision, right? So, and that ability to be able to accept you, have a relationship with you, and yet not dig. Don't control. Don't try to control the other person. Don't try to make the other person inferior, so you're the superior one in the relationship.
So interesting.
There's a lot of this going on here.
So it's interesting. I think that's why at the end he actually refers in parentheses to Vim Yodea Be'emes Shaloi Tov. That there's an idea that, yeah, especially in a relationship, let's say two siblings, it's inevitably
sometimes. As you mentioned earlier with your kid, right? You're not just going to let your kid do whatever they want. You're going to see certain issues there, and
so I think, but again, if it's coming from a place of Ava, and you could sit there telling your brother or your sibling or your friend, cut it out, kid. In other words, but as long as you're doing it for the sake of the relationship, I'm setting boundaries for the sake of the relationship. I'm not setting boundaries to create distance between us. It's almost like he spoke about in the previous sections, distance for the sake of connection. Sometimes, yeah, a family, I always say like family dynamics are complicated. You don't know what the boundaries are, and boundaries are always changing. Two brothers, when they're 10, have one set of boundaries. When they're 50, they have a different set of boundaries. And you learn them by mistake. So sometimes, yeah, the brother will sit there saying, dude, cut it out. I don't think he's saying don't do that. He's saying just, if you see something wrong, focus on the wrong, fix it. Right. But otherwise, just leave it. If it's not doing anything to you, and it's just you can't stand the other person for who they are, what do you want from me? I can't change who I am.
Right. So any comments I have, I should say after this recording and not like on air, because that wouldn't be respecting distance. I guess.
Boundaries.
It wouldn't be respecting the boundaries. Right?
But I'll be honest, but I think even in our relationship, that's what allows the relationship to flourish. Is yeah, when I overstep or you overstep, there is boundaries. I don't think that's a chisaron in a relationship. I find certain families don't have the ability to do that, and it creates incredible complexity.
Very enmeshed people.
Yeah. You're like, sometimes you have to tell somebody that you love, even your own spouse. I'm like, okay, sorry, a line was crossed. I don't think he's saying don't do that. It's not become like a tramp and everybody step over you. I don't see that.
No, on the contrary, that is what he's saying. He's saying to be able to have that, to laws up, right? To create that space.
Yeah, so I would say, to finalize, I would say that Achechem Sanechem, I think a big part of it is just setting healthy boundaries and healthy feedback systems. And like, I believe a lot of the issues in our community, I'm saying in human relationships, is a very unhealthy set of where Achechem starts and ends. And unfortunately, that's what leads to Sanechem.
And for that, you sort of need bittul because it is the passion of the relationship that doesn't allow you to create boundaries, right? If I want to connect with you, I want to be part of you, and every single part of you, and every kricharai, and every issue is my issue, et cetera, et cetera. And
so think about it. A bunch of yeshiva bachrim, a bunch of sem girls, they were close together. Then they get married a year later. You're not supposed to be sharing your marriage with your friend, but till now you were sharing everything. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. You want to solve your marriage issues, go talk to a therapist or a person you did in Mechutan. But just saying to your single friend who has no idea about marriage and venting about your husband or wife, like, you were tight. New boundaries have to be set. If not, it's going to create Achechem Sanechem.
Yeah.
So time to boundaries. Yeah.
L'chaim.
Shekayach Shmuly.